Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, White Castle Unwrapped, Navigating Efficiency Through Technology in Multi-Site Operations, hosted by FastCasual.com and sponsored by Leasecake. I'm Andy Detweiler, Managing Editor for Networld Media Group and the moderator for today's event. Our speakers today include Taj Adhav, founder of Leasecake, and Marie Tullidge, Senior Development Manager for White Castle. Marie, Taj, why don't you take a moment to introduce yourselves? Marie, if you'd like to go first.
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm Marie Tullidge, and I serve as the Senior Development Manager for White Castle. I've been here for 2 years, and my role includes everything from property management and lease administration to construction and project management, both for our deferred maintenance and remodeling programs and new site builds. I also get to work as liaison for the family on investment properties and redevelopments, including office and apartments.
Wonderful. Thanks, Marie. Thanks, Mandy, for kicking us off. My name is Taj Adhav. I'm the founder of Leasecake. I'm the brand and vision guy. And in case you all are wondering, this is a live webinar set, so this is not a virtual backdrop. For those of you out on the West Coast, I know it's 11 o'clock. It's 2 in the afternoon here Eastern, but we have not ordered lunch yet. So we put in our orders. Hopefully you've got team members that have headed down to the White Castle for your own deliveries. But I wanted to share a little bit about Leasecake. So we are a lease management made easy platform. And we started off from the very beginning knowing that restaurant operators' time is very precious. And we have to create solutions to help you focus on what matters when it matters most. Typically, it starts with a lease, but there's so many other things that you need to stay one step ahead of. And so what we did is we created Leasecake, two words that probably oftentimes you would think wouldn't belong together. But we felt like there was an easier way to manage not just leases and renewal options, but all the other things that need to be managed for proper location management, things like permits and licenses. And we do this in a way that is focused on beautifully designed, flexible, and easy to use applications that actually work for you and not the other way around. So we're super excited, Marie, to have you here and White Castle as our customer talking about all the challenges you faced, prior to joining White Castle and some of the experiences that you brought to the table. But I'd love for you to share a little bit about White Castle's story. I mean, tell us a little bit about the background and your role, how many locations you have, and we'll get things kickstarted.
Absolutely. So White Castle is still very proud to be a family-owned company from the beginning. They're on the fifth generation of the family now, and it's been a really exciting journey from start to finish. White Castle has always put their team members first, and the thinking here is, if we give people the right tools to do their job, then all of us win, and it's a better experience for the customers, and it's a better experience for the store. And we have 350 locations. Very proud of all of them. Our newest locations in Manhattan and Coney Island, as well as in Orlando, which is a very successful unit near where Taj is. And we're expanding in Arizona. We're excited to be opening a new unit there later this year.
And you held up traffic at the castle opening here in Orlando, I think on the interstate for hours. I think the police had to move in. Everybody here, was so excited about the new opening. So tell us about some of the challenges there as it relates to an expansion of an iconic brand such as yours.
Sure. Well, anytime you're moving into a new market, Orlando was a true new market for White Castle at that time. And our customers certainly didn't let us down, and we're lined up down the street for weeks and weeks. Making memorable moments is our mission. We're a very values-driven company and have held to that over 100 years now. Proud to have celebrated our 100th birthday recently. The challenges with the expansion for us range from everything from lack of available sites, smaller sites than what we used to be able to lease, having to rethink how the building can fit and rethink ways that we can value engineer it a little bit. We like to build them to last 100 years, as we say, but not all leases are for 100 years, of course. So we're just now starting to take a fresh look at how do we still give the customers the building that they love, but maybe looking a little bit different. Orlando is a great example of that. It's our largest building to date, which is also interesting and kind of different from what a lot of others in the industry are doing, but we have no problem filling it up. So it's a new prototype we're excited about.
That's great. So you're actually older than my dad. My dad's turning 95. So being a 100-year-old brand, what do you think is the staying power? I mean, is it the cravers out there? Is it you're hyper focused on serving the local markets as you expand?
Yeah, it's absolutely the Cravers. And we have a Cravers Hall of Fame. We still induct new members every year, and the stories come pouring in. You'll notice on all of our packaging for the sliders, we include stories from our Cravers, long journeys to get to the store, special holidays and traditions. We even had a wedding at one of our new castles recently. So people are very passionate about White Castle. And I think that, being special to the customers has mattered most. And it's the reason that we're still around today.
That's great. So 14 states now, I think you all are in. What areas are you expanding into or deepening your penetration in the markets? What's your new site kind of rollout plan looking like, if you can share?
Yeah, well, we're excited. Tempe, Arizona is the one that'll open by the end of this year, and that's to complement our Scottsdale location. And we're actively looking in Florida. There's been no secret about that. You'll see me and some of my colleagues in and out of every broker's convention in the state, right? Looking for more opportunities in Florida, just because we're so excited to continue the success of the new unit there.
Yeah, and the double drive-through. Is that working well for you? I'm sure there's some kind of permitting challenges or getting that set up with, traffic densities and anything like that you need to track.
Yeah, I mean, all the municipalities are backed up pretty rough, especially in some of these markets where we're looking to add more units. So the double drive-through isn't necessarily problematic. I mean, many other QSRs follow a similar pattern. You'll notice that many of our stores also now have incorporated a hospitality door to further engage with the customers from start to finish. And as far as big delays for projects, I would say utilities and municipal review are the biggest problems that we've faced really in the last 2 years.
Right. Well, so leveraging technology. Let's segue to that. As a senior development manager, with your experience now at White Castle, what types of talents and skills and experiences did you bring into White Castle to say, we need to invest in technologies? Tell us a little bit of that story, if you could.
Sure. Yeah. So before I came to White Castle, I was a real estate project manager at a major public university. And one of the challenges that we had faced during my time there, and I was with them for 5 years, had been, how do we have more consistent and accurate lease reporting? How do we make sure that our data is valid? How do we make sure that we're auditing with consistency and regularity? In the public sector, and especially in the academics, you end up with a lot of interns. And that's wonderful. It's great learning and it's a great exchange for all parties. But what can also end up happening there, though, right, is maybe those individuals haven't had a job before or haven't had any training. And how do we manage leases, making the complex understandable and being able to go back and double check our work in a way that's still efficient? Obviously, we can't have 4 people proofread every lease. And so those challenges were very fresh to me when I came here. And the rollout for Leasecake, I can't go on enough about it. We had used some internal software before, and it came with its own challenges. I would say from start to finish, Leasecake has been responsive, timely, and very thorough. The abstracting process alone has not only saved me and my team tremendous amounts of time, but it's given us a newfound confidence and speed to answer with urgency rather than having to go back and try to figure out where are my extra documents. And even the auditing process disclosed a lot of things that we didn't even realize we were missing, as I'm sure a lot of users will find, especially with that 100-year-old element for us here. Many of our documents are very old and have gone through different stages of storage, and having all of this digitized now is very important.
Wow, that's great to hear. No, thanks for that. So would you say that, you're kind of a champion of innovation, and I'm certain that you certainly had a welcome audience of the team that, surrounds you now at, within White Castle. Tell us about a little bit of that culture of desiring to innovate as a 100-year-old company.
Absolutely. And White Castle is often lauded as being a fast follower or a first adopter of key technologies. And you'll see some of that in the news even recently, right? Where we've made announcements about different rollouts that we're working on. White Castle likes to keep high energy and curiosity at the forefront of every team conversation that we have, right? And that permeates from top leadership and then all the way out throughout our stores. Not being afraid to ask the question, not being afraid to fail if we have to. And, White Castle is the first fast food company in America, which some people don't realize. And so, having that curiosity and the passion and not being afraid to get after it, I mean, that's really what White Castle has been about from the beginning. So for them, it's not bizarre or shocking to adopt a new technology, both from the lease administration perspective, but then also in our kitchens and our drive-throughs.
Absolutely. No, that's great. So I was there right here before this call at the Orlando Castle, and I was impressed. You've got Julia, you've got Flippy, from a safety perspective. You also have these automated napkin dispensers. So not only from lease administration perspective, but also just, the operations within your stores. I'm sure, the attendees here on this webinar would love to understand how you guys go through the vetting process and testing and being very much on the forefront of new innovations operationally in the restaurant, as well as, your back of office. So talk to me about that napkin dispenser. I was fascinated by that.
The napkin dispenser doesn't get enough attention, does it? So totally hands-free and fully automated napkin dispensing. The image you see here is, of course, Flippy. Yeah. And this is the robot that manages our fry baskets, as you can see him doing there. And, we're the only QSR that has been the Best Place to Work certified 3 years in a row. And we take that very seriously. We're very proud of that. And, making sure that our team members are freed up to focus and engage with the customer rather than working with something that obviously comes with all kinds of impacts, right? I mean, the fry baskets are sort of more complicated work that goes on behind the scenes and certainly can be messy work and work with a lot of waste. And so having the efficiency of Flippy is exciting. And so he's new enough now, right, that this is the test and learning phase for White Castle. And the customers, when they do see him, are fairly impressed. I like to think that he is beneficial both from a team member perspective as well as a customer perspective.
Right. Well, listen, we've got a lot of participants that kind of cover the spectrum of being small operators to even larger. Walk us through, because I'm sure this is going to be one of the questions, and definitely there's time for Q&A at the end for certain. But what are the ways that you and your team went about looking at different solutions, whether it was through an RFP or a software buying committee? Because I think there's a lot of not necessarily paralysis, but caution about, geez, I'm too busy to choose a different solution, or this is something that we're going to wait for to do next year. Talk about, the urgency that you brought to the table and the process to get decisions on new technologies like ours or others.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's specific to your technology. It's the only technology I've been involved in the rollout for, though I am responsible for project management and construction oversight for our teams, which include the installation and function of Flippy and the AI drive-throughs. But, again, going back to a culture of curiosity, White Castle always has top technology goals. And that's been something that they've been working on from the beginning, as I noted. And as far as, making decisions about rollouts, it's like, we are focused on what our team members need, focused on what they want, and really being connected and listening to the stores. And the store leadership teams are very detailed and diligent in their questions. And that makes all of us better. It makes the project smarter, and it drives the sense of urgency for any rollout that we do, including Flippy.
good to hear. So I guess it was a couple of weeks ago, you and some of your leadership team were here in the kitchen here at Leasecake. Getting adoption of a new software platform, how do what do you recommend in terms of a rollout, right? Certainly, there's a core team, but how do you start to evangelize that and make certain that there's, use and leverage and the efficiencies that you're ultimately shooting for?
Sure. And, with Leasecake, it's been really special because we're still rolling out additional features that you all are bringing in. And so for us, it was the different departments that can have the same functionality that we're using from a real estate perspective for their own needs, whether that be tax or marketing or accounting, any of those different users that might have other reasons to use Leasecake in that the full suite of services, I guess I would say. So for the rollout here for us, it was multifaceted. We started by doing a pretty deep dive on all of our physical records. And you all took that to the next step by identifying, again, any records that were missing, any records that we needed to track down. And then we obviously shared with our leadership team here, giving them a demo of the app-based services that we have in Leasecake. And again, I can't juxtapose it enough between the other system that we had been using, which was not app-based and was internal software and could only be accessed from dedicated PCs. Now, anyone who's using Leasecake has the ability to check, that proverbial 3 a.m. question of, who's my landlord? Do I fix my own HVAC unit? I've got a leak. Who's responsible? That kind of accessibility was super important. But the goal here for our team was, how do we communicate that in a way that doesn't require any kind of lift from the rest of the team here? And when you compare an external software service like what we have with your team versus one that our IT had to manage on their own, that's another relief of the burden, right? It helps them refocus on things that they're doing otherwise, rather than them trying to troubleshoot or maintain our lease administration software. So again, just getting that buy-out and making sure that everybody has an opportunity to see it in action.
Yeah. So speed is important. That's what I'm hearing. Accessibility is important. Talk about the types of documents that are important for your success, Marie. Maybe beyond just leases or renewals. Are there other things that you and your team need to have fast access to, whether it's the 3 a.m., losing sleep, or in a board meeting, or, with your girlfriends having lunch? What are the things top of mind that are outside of a lease, if you can share?
Yeah, I'm excited about the accounting functionality, which we're just now transitioning with your team. We had used a different software for that as well. So this idea that we could have one software suite for everything would be lovely, both owned and leased assets. I'm excited about the license components and getting a better understanding there. Certainly we have some licenses and different equipment agreements that would not be considered traditional real estate documents, things that, again, we've always tracked separately. And now, not just in theory, but in practice, we're able to see all of that in one place. And the dashboard is exciting, where we really like to lean into that, start using it almost as a hybrid project management software, especially for less complex assignments where we can, kind of assign it quickly to someone, have the conversation there, the record remains, and we can always go back to that and kind of track our progress. All of those things, for us are very important day to day. And it was funny when you all were giving us our statistics, and it turns out that whatever the three of us who use Leasecake from the real estate perspective, we're all getting on there every day. I think you said 5 times or more a day, whatever the number was. And we were surprised, pleasantly so, that we're that fluent in it, and we don't even think twice. It's just absolutely second nature, and it takes a lot for a software to be that user friendly, but Leasecake manages it.
Oh my God. Well, thank you for that. Appreciate it. We always believed in ease of use for certain, and mobile was always top of mind. So what's refreshing to hear is, when we created the application, not just for leases or, anything that was mission critical, time sensitive, any document anywhere can be accessible, 24/7. just kind of following what our customers and listening to what our customers need is so vital. So, thanks for your help in continuing to allow us to iterate on that. I got to ask, maybe it's a bit of a bombshell question, but let's talk about lease renewals. Have you guys ever missed one? Is there any story or maybe some horror story of something that almost came up where there was some risk? Is there anything you can share on?
Well, thankfully, I haven't encountered anything like that during my time at White
Right.
Castle, but I have in a prior job, and there were two incidents, and they were pretty severe. One of them, we lost the space because it was a missed renewal, and it didn't automate in our reporting, and enough people didn't see it, and obviously the project lead on that assignment was mortified, devastated. And obviously you can't undo incidents like that. And you only get one chance to mess up to that degree, I think, when it comes to leases. And while we all hope we have great relationships with our landlords, and we have many wonderful landlords, it's still business. And missing renewals is, the kind of thing that keeps our department up at night. And so another incident was related to renovations. And it was, the project lead was focused on some tenant renovations and didn't think to double check the lease beforehand, and got halfway through the work and realized we missed our renewal notice. And so the landlord allowed us to remain in the space, but came back with much higher rent demands. And obviously that would have changed how the renovations would pencil, but too late. So, not thinking through those questions, and frankly, not even having easy access to the documents that tell you how to lead your project, and it can lead to some pretty big incidents.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate your candor on that. I know sometimes it's a bit exposing to say, hey, these are some of the challenges. So I appreciate you being able to share that. Tied to potentially losing a location, are you seeing any potential risks? And this is getting a little bit ahead of potentially losing a location, but are landlords feeling the pressure with higher interest rates and looking for any excuse to find you out of compliance with their lease? I'm curious what you've experienced. You've got 350 locations all across.
Yeah, White Castle has been blessed, as I said, with many very understanding and supportive landlords. And, I guess I could only add that as far as landlord pressure, I mean, we operate in several markets that are high demand markets, hyper urban markets, very high rents, and a lot of areas going vertical throughout the city. So as far as landlords seeing pressure, I mean, that's more what I see in the market. And again, thankfully, that hasn't applied to any of our properties, but certainly we socialize with a lot of brokers and other in-house real estate representatives. And I think a lot of us have seen some pretty aggressive pressures throughout in different markets, surprising markets. And, I know we talked about the reconciliation of, how do we manage when municipalities are changing the regulations surrounding land use and permitted use and drive-throughs and anything like that. So it's an interesting time to be in the QSR business. So again, we're really excited about the new units that we've opened, and all of those stores have been success stories, which is wonderful. And all we can do is make sure that we're following our due diligence from the beginning, very carefully looking at every site we consider, and really informing our team about the schedule hurdles, just getting that information out to everyone on the front end, helping set expectations. It does take longer to open a store now than it might have even 5 years prior. And going back to the pressure you describe in some of these markets that are very overheated, very active, and the municipalities are backlogged, it's hard. It's hard to level set expectations when you'd love to open a whole lot faster.
Yeah, right. So one of the questions that often comes up is like, what's the approximate time between going from pretty much a committed LOI to store opening? Is there, number of days that you track? I mean, I'm certain that it probably varies by market.
Yeah, it's the cop-out answer, isn't it? Yeah, I would say each deal has been different, and for us, the delay is much more related to the permitting and the entitlements than it's been during negotiation windows. And I'm sure a lot of the audience here are experiencing the same thing. And again, we've had very reasonable and understanding landlords. Really, for the group here, it's about I don't know, but just being transparent with our internal team and keeping everybody apprised of how the negotiations go from start to finish. And that's something new that we're doing in this department. A lot of times, real estate will be in a bubble, or, we kind of do our thing and hand it off. But because we are an integrated department that really handles the property from its full life cycle, we have a unique opportunity in that way to be mindful about what the construction is going to look like, mindful about what the turnover and deferred maintenance is going to look like from the beginning. So it's a good, unique opportunity.
That's good. So would you say, is there a mix between de novo sites versus, acquired existing sites? Is there any kind of mix you can share?
I guess clarify the question a little bit.
Meaning a brand new site that you're building from the ground up versus acquiring let's say either a failed operator or an existing reuse of an existing.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah. And so we haven't had any retrofits during my time at White Castle. And I understand those have been fairly unusual in the portfolio. I'm sure we could Google a couple and find a few, but mostly everything that we do here is ground up, just because we have a specific building and we like it to be designed that way. And that start to finish mentality of, we know it's done right, we did it ourselves, and that's just the approach that we've used.
Yeah, perfect. So now we're talking about sites. Do you have any preferred kind of co-tenants? I mean, what's the mix that you look for? You can either name names or different kind of uses of co-tenants.
Sure. I mean, I bet we're looking for the same thing everybody else is, right? So,
right.
We're really excited about new developments. We're excited about being in those new markets that I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, where, it's high traffic for us. We're not building a ton of units. We need to have a few standalone units that perform really well and can perform on their own. And you can see that's the strategy that we followed for this last few years. So I wouldn't say any preferred tenant mix or anything like that, but much as we've been blessed with a lot of great landlords, we've been blessed with a lot of great neighbors. So it's more and more common for us, like everyone else in a pad site, to be part of a larger development. Yeah. And that requires a shift in how our team manages those properties. And whereas before, most of these were standalone, sometimes their own tax parcel, right? And now we don't necessarily see as much of that anymore, and have to get a lot more curious early on about, what are the ramifications of being in the development? What are those costs? And, how do we be good neighbors as well? It's very important to us to be a friendly and popular group and neighbor in a development. So we try to do everything that we can to make sure that our space is well kept, and we're proud of it. We want it to show.
Right. Well, good. As we talk about the kind of the shifting real estate market and where you guys are expanding, definitely being on the go and having accessibility is important to you. How do you measure, either the ROI or the efficiency? You talk about speed. One of the things that'll be great for you to touch on is, internally within White Castle, what's the value of speed in an execution of decisions? I mean, is it, we're saving hours upon hours. How would you measure speed? Scale of 1 to 10, let's just say 10 being the best.
Well, but measure speed in terms of what, from our use of Leasecake, or how much of a priority it is for us?
Just getting access to key information that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So, I mean, as far as that goes, we like to be responsive. We like to be timely. So I would say in that sense, speed is, that 10 out of 10 priority level. If we can get something out immediately, that's what we would like to do from the property management perspective. And from a project management perspective, specific to construction, I wouldn't say so much that we're about speed. The efficiency is more than just speed, though, of course. And so for us, we're we're absolutely dedicated to constructing a quality building and one that is safe and accessible and pleasant for our team members. And so we definitely have taken an approach where sometimes our construction takes a little bit longer. Sometimes we're using a little bit higher end finish than we have to do. And we're choosing to do that because it's something that's important to our team members.
Got it. Yeah. So efficiency is vital for you, but in some cases, from a construction perspective, it's better to be thoughtful and planned, right? Keeping track of.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're very conservative and we like to be really sure about a site. So we definitely don't have a problem taking our time to make a decision.
Yeah. Could you quantify the amount of time saved with getting fast access to lease information or key dates and the like?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I would say our old software that was going through some struggles is why we were interviewing your team. I mean, it was taking as long as 5 to 10 minutes just to pull a record, and much longer than that if we had to run a report. And anything that we did, we had to customize it. I mean, that could go on for days at a time. We were pulling some of our records from offsite storage, and that was sometimes a few business days we might even lose waiting to try to pull something up. And so, I mean, from a percentage basis, I would say that Leasecake has trimmed at least 45% of the staff hours that it was taking us to just gather data. Now, all of that time gets to be spent packaging it, presenting it, pitching it, whatever that may be. And then we can let Jeremy is my lease administrator, then we can let Jeremy refocus his efforts on the actual engagement, right? Whether it be the engagement with our store team when they have a question, engagement with the neighbors if there's a conflict, or engagement with the landlord if there's something to be processed. And so we are not just saving that whatever 45% of time that we would have been spending with the administration component, but it's making us more responsive on the day-to-day. Something that might have gotten tabled or have to be processed, towards the end of the week, getting through all the lease administration. Now we're able to deal with that timely and upfront. It's done worlds for our prioritization in terms of workflow.
No, that's great to hear. It's a recurring theme across most of the market. Strategically reallocating resources. You got really smart people in the company. They shouldn't be looking at spreadsheets or tracking things down. It's like, how do you free their minds up so they can go and execute on the vision of the expansion plan? So it's wonderful to hear that you're, completely reaffirming that. We're seeing some good questions come through across the chat. So just a quick little reminder here before we get close to our wrap up. Feel free to put your questions in the chat and we'll definitely save time for answering them all. So defining success, I think we touched on, the time savings part. I mean, that 45% number, that's an incredible stat. But are there other ways that you define success of any type of application in the tools that you're using, Marie, or across?
Absolutely. Yeah. For me, accuracy was actually my top priority when I came to Leasecake. I wasn't as concerned about anything other than having a reliable record and documentation of the leases in the portfolio, and frankly, the properties and projects in the portfolio, since Leasecake solves issues for owned assets as well, which was very important to us and one of the reasons that we're able to integrate. And I would say that the cross-functional aspects, for me, that's how we define success. If it's something that my full department can benefit from, that's very important to me. And having a team that's invested in the success of the rollout of any system, right? Having that buy-in and those conversations, frankly, just seeing that our team is empowered. We all made fun when we first had Leasecake rolled out because one of our team members that we didn't expect would quickly transition to it. We caught him using it and made such a big deal about it because it was like he hates technology, he hates software, he hates messing with anything that we're changing. And so we were all able to have a laugh about that because, it's not a valuable tool if people aren't going to use it. So usability, accuracy, very important.
Wonderful. Well, and who doesn't like cake? So for goodness sakes, yeah, it's important for it to be approachable. And, from that standpoint, that's where we learn and continue to iterate on. that's a great personal story. I had not heard that one before. So I think we talked about new locations, the one in Tempe. Challenges. What things do you foresee in the market in 2024? If you can kind of get your crystal ball out, Marie, whether it's White Castle specifically, your team, or even across the industry, what kind of trends are you seeing? Because you're very plugged into the real estate market across the nation.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, most of our markets are East Coast and Midwest. And as I said, kind of the hyper urban density. So New York, Chicago, Detroit. And, the biggest challenge that we're navigating, I think, for next year is similar to what we've been navigating this year. And while we were happy that some of the long lead times got cleared up, some of the logistics challenges got cleared up, supply chain, all of that really impacted our construction work this year. And it seems that we've gotten through the worst of that. But again, the rezoning and the municipal requirements around drive-throughs, what that's going to look like. We're very passionate about the communities in which we serve, and we've been in many of these markets from the beginning or for the full duration of our company history. And so we're excited. We're committed to bringing a quality product and memorable moment to every community that we serve. It just means that some of the stores might look a little different, or it might take us a little bit longer to navigate what the cities need. And as I mentioned, utilities, unfortunately, utilities lead times. And I hear a lot of my friends, colleagues from other companies are experiencing this. It's the kind of thing that feels like the new normal, right? You might get your store done and be waiting 6 to 9 months for permanent power or a transformer or that final sign off from the utility company. So hopefully these things get resolved and clear up more easily for the year to come. But we're certainly not planning on it. We're planning on the long-term challenges and trying to think through creatively how to be more on top of that. If there's anything that we can do to address it ourselves, we certainly will. And I know everybody's in the same boat.
Wonderful to hear. Yeah, so I think that's a great recap. We can start to move to Q&A. We're starting to see some good questions come across. I think we touched on, was Leasecake a replacement for an existing solution? That was a question that came in. How was purchase justified by leadership? Kind of refresh our memories a little bit, or maybe add a little bit more there in terms of, what convincing did you need to do? Was it just time savings? Was it accuracy? A little combination?
Yeah. So, to be frank, as I said, we were having some episodic issues with the software that we had in-house, and they had been using it for quite some time. And the individual who had kind of managed that for us had moved on to another opportunity. And so that transition and the realization of the team that we had some accessibility challenges with the software, we had some accuracy concerns with the records, and we figured no time like the present. Let's just see what it would cost and what might happen if we started completely fresh rather than trying to patch or fix or repair what we were using. And that software also was dependent on at least 2 other programs to fully function. And that's not ideal either, right? Not to mention that we were still splitting the accounting function. So from a justification standpoint, it truly was the idea that as a result of this software, we were able to have a completely different job description for what property management and lease administration looks like at the company. And so, that's exciting. It's a big change, but having that individual freed up to work on a more transactional basis with the portfolio, it's also probably a more interesting position to a lot of people who work in that field, right? And so we were always trying to be mindful of how do we help individuals grow and develop and get to do new things and work on new projects that excite them. You can't really get to do any of that if you're bogged down with software challenges or navigating the kind of mountainous administration of the thing. And so it's a completely new position now, and one that as you've met Jeremy, my lease administrator, he enjoys the role and he gets to do things that he wants to do, not just all the struggle that you might have to deal with on a day-to-day as a property manager.
Yeah, it's probably one of the most unforgiving jobs to be a lease administrator, right? So much is riding on accuracy and speed that the stress is oftentimes just overwhelming. So it was a pleasure to have met Jeremy and many of your other team members too. There's a question that came in with regards to site selection and tracking new opportunities and kind of weighing one location to the other. I guess you could call them deals, you could call them opportunities. Are you using any capability, whether it's in our solution or others, to track deals, if you will?
Yeah, so, and I'm aware of Leasecake working on some features in that way, and I'd like to get more familiar with those features.
No.
Right now, the way that we've been tracking deals, we're using other software, but it's kind of in combination with, as I noted, it's an integrated department where we're doing the holistic project lifecycle, and it's never just real estate. So from a deal tracking perspective, the things that we're most carefully monitoring, going back to that municipal timing, construction timing, how we work around the weather. We're in a lot of cold weather markets. So these are the things that we're usually most mindful of tracking. But I am interested in tracking, at least from like an LOI perspective, right? Having all of our templates and our deal evolution running through Leasecake would be tremendous. And that's certainly the approach that I've had Jeremy follow here, is that as long as anybody in leadership can quickly go to the document and see, okay, what is that deal evolution? How many iterations of this have we gone through? Just, the big picture stuff. How many days have we been talking about it? And how many versions did it take to get us to a lease? That's very helpful when we're selling property as well. In fact, I would say that's the most frequent type of project that we're tracking, is going through those due diligence phases with a potential buyer or subtenant.
Great to hear. No, thanks for that feedback. So please put in your questions on the chat as we kind of near our lunch hour. Maybe you guys are expecting your White Castle delivery to come soon. I know we are. As it relates to kind of communication, let's talk a little bit about your broker strategy. I mean, obviously, Marie, you're a force. You're out there in your key markets. Do you have like exclusives with brokers, or do you have specialty brokers that you prefer to work with in your key markets, or is it just meeting as many people to surface these opportunities?
Sure. We certainly had some brokers that have been with us for a long time. We don't have any exclusives, and we're always excited to explore new opportunities. For White Castle, kind of partnership is really important. The family values are very important. And so when we do find friends in the market and partners in the market, we tend to be very loyal about that. We love to build a relationship and kind of go through a series of projects together, as opposed to one-off or more limited transaction-based relationships. So no exclusives, but we do try to find like local partners specific to the market, and that applies to our construction and our consulting as well. And we work in a lot of diverse markets that require some specialty. So if it's some of our more complicated markets, we're probably much more committed to sticking with whatever's been working for a long time. But we're always open to new things and making new friends.
Well, that's good. The question just came across with regards to delivery. I know yesterday, like I said, man, I want to get White Castle delivered. The drive distance is a little too far. So I went down there and it worked out fantastically. Curious about your position on drivers and delivery, and whether any of that tech integrates within White Castle's infrastructure.
Yeah, well, I encourage everybody to check out our app. We're really excited about it and have been putting a strong focus on that, and coordinating that more directly with our store teams. And certainly we have delivery partners like everyone else. In Orlando, we have a unique situation where we have an inline space that we've leased next door to the restaurant space, because the restaurant space was too busy for us to process and manage delivery. So that walk-up concept is something new that we tried, and it's been very successful.
That's nice. So that's what I experienced this morning when I was there. Seeing kind of how you've integrated so many different, ways to interact with the customer, the kind of touchless dining, the menu ordering, the automated napkin dispensers, the walk-up counter. It's been great. So if there's no other questions, I think our delivery just came in from White Castle. And just to prove that this is not a digital backdrop, this is actually our kitchen. And so we got our crave case here. So cannot wait to dive into lunch. I know. Yeah, it's wonderful to have you here on our webinar, and thank you very much, Mandy, Fast Casual, for helping facilitate this. We couldn't be prouder of our relationship with you, Marie, and your team and your leadership team. It's inspiring and humbling to be a partner with a 100-year-old company, and we're 5.5 years old. And it's something that I started over a cup of coffee at a diner, and I actually have your coffee mug right here. So you guys are totally into brand, totally into the crave culture. So it's fascinating and wonderful story. I'm so glad we were able to share it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Well, that will do it for today's webinar. Taj, Marie, thank you for your time today. This webinar can be watched on demand and will be available in a few days. And have a great day, everyone.